Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. And today, in the co-captain's chair, he is back from tour. Mr. Luis Nasser is here with us. What's up, my friend?
Not a whole lot. Just as we were talking earlier, I'm still just doing the last couple of recordings for the album, and excited to do this ranking. Thank you for having me, Pete. It's always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure having you on. And we have, Lewis and I have been talking about ranking the albums of Pete Townshend's solo catalog for a long time. That's right. There's Mr. Townshend right here. But here was the interesting thing. So we made the executive decision that we're going to do 6 albums. We're going to include the Pete Ronnie Lane album as a Pete Townshend solo record, even though that's more of a collaboration album. But that's really the first time that Pete did something outside of the Who. And if you know the album, to me, it's more of a Pete solo album anyway, in a way. So we've decided to include that and everything else. So we've ranked them in our order of preference. And I'll have Lewis kick us off with his number 6.
All right. Just for me, Pete Townshend has always been a kind of an enigma. His music is extremely important to me. I'm a diehard Who fan. I think of him as a musical genius.
Yep.
But I also think that he is a guy who's absolutely beset by contradictions. So it's when you listen to the music and you really inhabit it, it's difficult to kind of square the circle in a way. But I mean, I've listened to these records so much over the years, and just going back to them for this show was very interesting, because I really had to hear them in a different light. and it was very hard to rank them, actually. I think that they fall into 2 broad categories. So my least favorite, and it's only because it is a Pete Townshend solo record, because his hands are in everything, but only about half the songs are his. And of those songs, there's only one that I think really has his signature song, which is, Hard to Hang On To. So my least favorite will have to be Rough Mix for me. It is the one and only time I've ever heard, for example, people who are not familiar with this record. It's a very good, none of them are bad. That's the first thing I will say. None of these records are bad. They're all great. If you ever wonder what it would sound like if Charlie Watts drummed on a Pete Townshend song, here's your answer. and I knew it was Charlie Watts just because he has that way of playing where he hits the snare without hitting the hi-hat at the same time. So it's like that. So that's the first song. And it's a great rock and roll song, but the rest of the record, it's somewhat like 1 and 1, right? Pete does a song, Ronnie Lane does a song. And if I've read a lot about Pete Townshend's life. I think that while they obviously respected each other creatively, I think Pete was also very interested in Ronnie Lane's wife's mystical ideas. So this is another thing that's always been around him, like a fog, this whole mysticism. I don't know. I find this record to be a very pleasant listen. There's nothing objectionable about it, but it has the least amount of the Pete Townshend that I like.
Yeah.
So that would be my number 6.
So keep it up. It's the only one I don't own, actually. Rough Mix is my number 6 as well. I will say I enjoyed the Pete Townshend written and sung stuff on the album quite a bit. I really don't like any of the Ronnie Lane stuff on the album.
Yeah.
First of all, he can't sing. And I find most of his songs are very kind of folky, just kind of not very interesting. But the Pete stuff I think is very good. My Baby Gives It Away there's a few songs on here that could have been on a Who album, I think, done very well. That's one of them. You mentioned Hard to Hang On To. Really good. Got the horns on it, great acoustic guitar layers. I really like that album. I like that song a lot. Rough Mix is a good song, title track.
Yes.
Keep Me Turning is also really good.
Keep Me Turning could have been a great Who song too.
Absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
But the rest, like I said, the rest of the album is very laid back, and I find like Ronnie's vocals very kind of frail and weak and just not very good. So to me, this album is very hit or miss, but the Pete stuff is great. It's basically an album of two tales, right? Two halves, two stories. You've got you.
It's in the title, rough mix. It
Right, that's
really
what
is,
it
right?
is. It's like, and it's almost like it's not a collaboration album because it's like you got the Pete stuff and you got the Ronnie stuff, and they neither one of them sounds anything like the other. So I would have, to me, this album works better as a Pete Townsend EP with just his stuff, and it's amazing and it's really good. So for me, this like automatically defaults to number 6 just because I don't give two shits about the Ronnie Lane stuff. Love Ronnie, but on this album, doesn't do anything for me. So yeah, rough mix number 6.
Agreed. Completely agreed. Um, all right. Now the next one may be controversial for some because I don't have this. I never bought it on CD. I when I was in Mexico, I saw my vinyl copy there, but and it's a record that has amazing songs, some of which were recorded by the Who. It belongs to the period of the Lifehouse kind of situation. Um, I believe it's his first solo record. Who Came First from 1970 or 71, I think is when it came out. I mean, look, it has Let's See Action. It has Pure and Easy. It has essentially Who classics. But then it has songs like Parvardigar. I don't have anything to show, but it's a very strange, the first snapshot into the difference between Pete Townshend's version of his songs and the Who's version of the same songs. It also is a record where, for the first time, we get to hear, at least I got to hear, what it sounds like when Pete Townshend plays drums. And there's a reason, I think, why a lot of his demos, for people who don't know, there's a whole series of demos that have been released through the years called Scoop, which we're also not going over, but a lot of his demos have a lot of hand clapping and little toys for percussion and things, I think, because that's how he just tracked himself as a rhythm. It's not great to hear him drum. And this is a problem that also plagued The Endless Wire, which I truly believe would have been a fantastic album had Pete Townshend just let other people do what they do better than him. But it is a very good record. It's just a record that I don't reach for very often because if I want to hear those classic Who songs, I hear them done by the Who. I got to see them do it live, Pure and Easy and Let's See Action in 2001 before Entwistle died. It was incredible to hear those guys do it. So yeah, it's a record that I have listened to probably hundreds and hundreds of times. But I've always struggled with the dichotomy. That's why was he so obsessed with this Mayor Baba character? All these stories about him, they just don't make any sense to me. But the muse, there's something about the way that guy threads the needle when he's writing a song that is so unique. I don't know if you agree, but it also shows you that this guy wasn't really that influenced by the blues.
Not really.
He has this very much his own idiom, and it's magical the way he writes songs. But that record, just, you can see the importance of the other guys in his world, much to his chagrin, but he really did need them. So yeah, that's my number 5. Who Came First?
So I actually didn't include that in my ranking. So I'm wondering if there's one that you didn't include to put that one in. I guess we'll see, but
Oh,
we'll see as we go through. So my number 5 is the Iron Man, the musical. So I guess technically this is his 5th album. Large scale adaptation of Ted Hughes' story, The Iron Man. You got Roger and John is on here. John Lee Hooker is on here. Deborah Conway's on here. All sorts of guest stars on here. This is basically kind of almost like a soundtracky type thing. And it's, to me, it sounds more like a collaborative album than an actual Pete solo album. It's got all these different singers, all these different parts. There's some good material on here. I think I Won't Run Anymore. Great duet between Pete and Deborah. It's one of my favorite songs on here. Roger Daltrey sings a song Dig, which is really good. There's a song called I Eat Heavy Metal, which is kind of, again, Iron Man, right? John Lee Hooker sings on that one. That's pretty cool. And then there's a really interesting version of the song Fire by Crazy World of Arthur Brown, which I know most people know that song, but that features all three of these surviving Who guys on it. It really doesn't sound anything like the original song. And I think that's really cool because they did something different with it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't one of his best, but there's some really good material on here. If I was to, if someone was to ask me, where's the first place to go for Pete Townshend solo stuff, I wouldn't direct them here, but there's some good stuff on here regardless. And it just goes to show you where he was. This was 1989. I mean, he was into doing these like large scale things still and trying to do something different. So yeah, it's good. Not essential, but it's good. I like it. That's my number 5.
Cool. My next one is what was officially his last solo record that was released back in 1993. I couldn't find my copy of my CD. I don't know where the hell it is. I've discovered, there we go. Thank you. I've discovered some of my CDs have grown legs. I just can't find them. But anyway, that record has the other part of the Who's and Pete Townshend's idiosyncrasies that I think has plagued the man. And that is that he has this incredibly awesome habit of telling these stories, and they're very highly introspective, painfully autobiographical, right? This happened, there we go, 10 years before he was arrested for the child pornography charges.
Yes.
Which, just for the record, not only was he cleared of them, but the lead investigator of Operation Core and Pete have remained close friends ever since. And, a lot of people, I've heard a lot of chirping about that through the years. He really did nothing wrong, other than be Pete Townshend and be thinking that he could just do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. That story is plagued by the idea that he needs a narrator. And it really gets in the way of the music, horribly. It's like he's trying to do musical theater. And that record has got some great songs, some really, really great songs. But you got to sit through all this rap, to get to them. And there's all this stuff that began with Who by Numbers, this self-hatred, the drinking, the rock star lifestyle, this shit, everything is terrible. I am in pursuit of this purity of art. All these things that are in his life, they're there. And they just get in the way of the actual songs. The lyrics are brilliant. He doesn't need a fucking narrator. All he needs is to let his music do his talking for him, including his words. They're there already. But it's like he thinks we're just too dumb to get it. So he has to explain it to you. And that's where I get very frustrated at him, because it's like, man, just so much so that when the record was released, and I mean, somebody in the comments may know the details exactly, but it was a bit of a flop commercially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the record label, in a panic, decided to release a second version of the record that was not narration heavy. So it really depends which record you get. And the second record, some of the songs have additional verses and things that he cut out from the music so he could fit his fucking talking. To me, it's just insane, right? It's a gorgeous album. The sound, English Boy is another song that could have been a fantastic Who song. Just great, and the songs where he's declaring his love to the, I forget the title of the song, but when he's telling the Ruth character, the young woman, that her disgust for him has made him fall in love with her. It's just such a brilliant Pete Townshend statement. I just love everything about that whole thing, but I don't need them to actually tell me, and the manager, that dirty manager, I don't know how Bill Kerbishley felt about this record, because Pete Townshend is in a habit of shitting on the people that have closely worked with him for the longest time.
Yeah.
But it's just a great record, but it is marred by his narration. The same sort of stuff that I don't know if you saw the 1996 that first Quadrophenia tour they did when they got back together. It I saw it at Madison Square Garden, and it had this narrator. Like the action is happening, and then it stops, and there's a screen, and there's this Jimmy is talking to you. I'm like, what are you doing? You're killing me here, right?
Yeah, you don't need it, right? Yeah, we all
So
know the
that's what
story,
happens
right?
for this one, and this is why I don't like it more, because I think that it really just gets in the way of the music. So this is why that'll be low on the chain, with a caveat: they're all great.
So that's also next for me at number 4. There's some really good songs on here, but I mean, his whole idea is that he wanted this to be a rock opera, but a rock opera that, if you can imagine, would be played on the radio, and the DJ or whatever is kind of hosting and taking you through it. I don't know why he ever thought that that was a good idea, because you can't enjoy these songs with all that shit going on every minute and a half, 2 minutes. There's some really good songs on here. You mentioned English Boy, great song. Let's Get Pretentious, great song. Outlive the Dinosaur, I Want That Thing. These are all really good, quirky, catchy Pete Townshend songs. You got the whole Maher Baba stuff on here, the instrumentals, which you've heard bits and pieces of these throughout Who songs.
There's bits of Who Are You thrown in there.
Exactly, right? Exactly. I don't get the dialogue, the narration. I think it's annoying as all hell. And yeah, they have 2 versions out there, one with and one without. I think this would have been a very well received album if they had released the music only version originally and got rid of the other stuff, because I think this shows Pete still got a lot in the tank for 1993 as far as writing and creating stuff. So yeah. For those watching, if you never heard Psychoderelict, get the version that does not have the narration. You'll like it. Quite good. So
yes,
back to you.
All right, the next one in the list for me is Iron Man. I again, this has you said a few things about it. I think that there's always multiple layers to Pete Townshend's writing, and his, if people tell him that they think the Who were one of the seeds that led to heavy metal, that will irritate him, and then forever he will just say that he hates heavy metal, even though he's playing through a stack of high watt amps and leaping through the air like on your shirt. This is just how he is, right? I always thought, although it is part of the story, I eat heavy metal, it is also a tongue-in-cheek attack at all the people who this is at the end of the 80s, right? So heavy metal was the all the rage. And Pete Townsend was like, yeah, I'm not impressed, kind of a thing. It is a great album, though. I think I Won't Run Anymore. What a great opener. It's just a very good Pete Townsend song. It has that weird Man the Machines, like this little what am I looking? It's like a circular song that begins and ends with the same words, and the chords just go around. It's just a really interesting tune. A Friend Is a Friend, Was There Life. You mentioned Fire, which I think is a great and I believe they played Dig at the 89 tour with the Who, the Tommy.
I think so, because that's got the whole band on it anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a great, it has some great stuff. It's just it's a decent sounding album. I enjoy it. I listen to this every year at least once or twice, even all this time later. So I enjoy Iron Man. I don't know how much it has to do with that animation movie that came out later. I don't know, but the story, as I can piece it together from the record, it's kind of fun. It's not too riddled with Pete Townsend, culture clashes of his own making. But
I'm wondering if the cartoon film was based on the original story, right? It has nothing to do with the Pete Townsend album, but yeah, it could be, because that's a charming story, right?
And it does feature the kid Hogarth, right? That's kind of
yeah. All right, next up for me is All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes from 1982, third album. Contains all brand new songs at the time, plus a few that he brought to the Who table for some of those albums that didn't quite make the cut. Great songs on here, very synth dominated. There's a lot of kind of like new wave quirkiness to the album, or art rock, whatever the hell you want to call it, right? This is not the harder rocking Pete Townsend on this album, but he's still showing that the guy knows how to write some really good melodies and catchy songs, right? Stop Hurting People is great. Love that song. And his vocals are really good on this album, quite a bit. The Sea Refuses No River, majestic, classic Townsend right there. Face Dances Part 2. That's such like a eclectic, quirky, kind of like electronic new wave pop with a great chorus. It's just so good. Exquisitely Bored. It's great. Memorable. The choruses on this album carry the album for me, because like the rocker in me wants to hear more guitar, which you don't really get on this album, but the choruses are just so good, you just can't deny them. Uniforms, so memorable. Somebody Save Me is good. I mean, and Chris Thomas's production is fantastic on this album. This is one of the 3 albums that he worked with the band with Pete on, and I think the production is dynamite on all 3 of them. So I like this a lot. I would not argue if people had this higher, because I think it's pretty damn terrific. It's number 3 for me, but I still think it's quite good. And again, Lewis, I think Lewis has an extra album in here, so he's got one extra. But yeah. So anyway, back to you for your next one.
I have 3 left.
Okay. So you added the one extra. So yeah, so you have 7.
Cool. So my next one is going to be White City. White City. I don't know if people have watched the little movie that he made, where he premieres some of these songs. You can find it on YouTube. And again, as usual with Pete Townsend, it's about some rundown neighborhood in London, and some guy who's immersed in this conflicted life, working class guy. People who have absolutely nothing to do with Pete Townsend's life for the majority of his existence on Earth. Right? I know that he's even as a child, he was always backstage with his parents, right? Because his dad was a sax player and his mom was a singer. So he's always had a different life.
Yep.
But this record has got some of his absolute best songs, I think.
Yep.
And others that I think are kind of this is where I really start to get the sense that fundamentally he was a little bit embarrassed about the hard rock DNA of his composition.
Yeah.
He wanted to show that he has, well, if Sting can leave the Police and have a successful career, and if so-and-so, so can I. And he didn't. And there are good reasons for it. But songs like Give Blood, Secondhand Love, and the title track, with that incredible fretless solo by I don't know if it's Pino Palladino or Chucho Merchan, but it's just a great composition. And Give Blood is, to me, the greatest non-Who song that the Who should have played.
One of his best solo songs, I would.
Yes, agree. I mean it's just definitive Pete Townsend, right? The movie that he put out, it actually includes a longer cut. It takes longer to kick in, because he was always enamored with his like little swirls and bobbing little sound effects. But it's a great record. I've played it to death. I love it. It also has this little thing that he began with, Face to Face, like the big band sort of dancey thing that he sort of took an interest in, which is not my favorite aspect of his music, but people love that song. People who love to shake their ass love that song. So it has its place. It's just not for me, but I dig this a lot. This is a great record. White City.
For me, White City and All the Cowboys are very close. So I went back and forth with which one do I rank higher. And I think they both contain some of his most memorable songs. And I ultimately went White City just a little bit higher. For Give Blood and Face to Face. I mean, there's a couple songs I think that just kind of ticked it up a little bit for me. Plus, I think that this album brings a little bit more guitar back into the arrangements, I think. So of course that's a plus for me. And I'm sure all the prog fans like this album just because David Gilmour plays on White City Fighting, which is a terrific song, right? Really, really good song. But I think there's some really cool stuff on here. There's a lot of variety. I mean, you got like Hiding Out, which is like kind of pop and kind of Caribbean, kind of breezy kind of thing going on, which is a little different for him. Come to Mama is a really cool closer. I really like that song a lot. It's a kind of a hidden gem on the album. To me, the last two tracks, White City Fighting and Come to Mama, I think are really, really cool. And the songs that nobody talks about, but they're really good. But yeah, I mean, there's some really good stuff on here. Secondhand Love is great. So catchy. So yeah, it's my number 2, but this one could be number 2 on any given day. I think these are so close. It's almost like they're tied. But for me, my number 1 has always been my number 1. So, but back to you for your number 2, I guess.
All right. My number 2 is going to be Empty Glass. Now, look, I think every song on here is genius in different ways. It really is. And some of these songs were also recorded by The Who when Kenny Jones was in the band. Kenny Jones was the drummer for some of these songs.
Yep.
I think talking about a rough mix, I think Kenny Jones got a rough deal being shoved by Pete Townshend into the band. He did a really good job, but he's who he is.
And he wasn't the right guy.
Right. But he played the shit out of those songs. He really did. It's just that wasn't his style. I love the fact that he recorded a song like I Am an Animal. That is a song that a lot of people don't mention, but I think it's one of his best songs ever. I absolutely love everything about it. The lyric, the cadence, it's just brilliant. But really the one that, A Little Is Enough for me is just a lost treasure that The Who should have recorded. It's a fantastic song. Rough Boy's got a lot of play. It's a nice opener. It has those open sustained chords that he likes over a pedal point. It's brilliant. It's just brilliant stuff. I don't know why he felt like this was not worthy of The Who. Like The Who that's the thing. I think that until his arrest, he never really valued The Who as much. It was like just based on all these interviews and things I've read him say through the years, he always thought there were a bunch of yobs, is what he called them. These like rough, unsophisticated people. He was an art school boy and an artiste, and these guys were just about breaking things and kicking ass and doing all these other things. So he wanted to show that he could write other stuff that was not Who dependent. But I don't know that it works necessarily as well without the other guys. This got pretty close though.
Yeah.
It got pretty close. And but it's still a little weepy. It's still a little Who by numbers in the title track, Empty Glass. It has a little bit of that, oh, woe is me thing that he does. But I love it. I mean, how can you go wrong with that record? And the cover is just so good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's my number 1. I mean, his kind of self-loathing is all over this album, and even sprinkled around this catalog. Like you mentioned before, and it's 100% correct, how his opinion of The Who, especially during their heyday, is a little questionable. But yet you look at his career towards the end of The Who's heyday, after Keith died, and all of a sudden now Pete's no different. He's got drug problems and he's an alcoholic and his marriage is failing and friends are dying, and all of a sudden he's no different than anybody else. And I think that really disappointed him. I always thought that Pete Townshend really thought he was an artist, right? An artiste, and above everybody else. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, right? Or he was stuck up or whatever, but that's just the life that he came from. And I think all of a sudden he's down in the gutter with everybody else that he was always kind of like looking at. And I think that really bothered him. And a lot of that self-loathing about where he was in his life came through in his music, good, bad, or ugly, right? So yeah, this album to me is very autobiographical, I think, but I really like it. And I agree with you 100% that there's a lot of stuff on here that could have been Who songs and arguably better than some of those two Who albums they did after Keith died. I like Kenny Jones. I think he was great in the Faces and Small Face, all that stuff. I never thought he was right for the Who. He did a
But he sounds great on Rough Boys, though, right?
He does, right? Yeah, but you know what? I don't know if that's his fault, Lewis, because I somehow always thought that they told him, we don't want you to play like Keith. And whether or not that was his thing or not, I don't know. But to me, the music of the Who needs that type of drummer. I'll tell you right now, after revisiting this album over the last 2 weeks to get ready for this show today, you know who's great on this album? Simon Phillips. That's the guy who should have been the drummer for the Who after Keith passed away.
And he was for that tour, right? For that Tommy tour. Yeah.
He should have been the guy that was invited to join the band, play on those couple of Who albums, and do whatever. I mean, he's the guy. I mean, he sounds great on the, what's he on, like 4 or 5 songs on this album? That's the guy. That's the guy. But I mean, there are classics on here that I couldn't deny when I decided to make this my number one. I love Rough Boys. I think And I Moved is magical. I mean, Rabbit's piano, man. Oh, that's just great. Let My Love Open the Door was the first single on this album. I remember hearing that on the radio all the time. It's a very charming song. Keep on Working is great. Gonna Get You is so good. That could have been a Who song. And I Am an Animal is really good. And again, you listen to the lyric. I'm not much of a lyric guy, but man, you listen to the lyrics on that song, and I'm like, that's him talking about shit that he's going through.
Yeah, so, but it's also very humanitarian. That's what I like about it. It's him, but then he has these general observations that I think are quite brilliant. Actually, it's I've always loved the fact that this is the one place where he sort of validates Keith Moon and Jules and Jim.
Yeah.
When he says they don't give a shit, Keith Moon is dead. Is that exactly what I thought I read? Like, how dare you disrespect this man that I disrespect habitually, but he's my guy to disrespect.
I could do that, right? Yeah, exactly.
Right? You don't get to talk shit about Keith Moon, right? I love that. It has that feistiness that I love about him. So, yeah.
Cats in the Cupboard is another great song, another good rocker on here. And again, Chris Thomas's production on here is really good, really good. I think he worked wonders with Pete on these 3 albums. I really like it a lot. So that's my number one. But let me hear you talk more about Cowboys, because
Cowboys. Now here's the thing. This record is really special to me. It is not his most energetic.
No, doesn't need to be though.
But it is. This is the record that somebody who is separated from his wife, living on his own, and not quite at rock bottom, but starting to lick the floor, kind of a thing, writes. And when I first heard it, when it came out, I guess it named 81 or 82 when this came out. Look, a lot of these songs to me are warnings about what happens if you're not careful, what happens if you take things for granted, such as your youth, such as your friends, such as your opportunities, the people who love you, right? That you sometimes push away or don't spend enough time with. And when you're young and you're driven, it's very easy to do all these things. So for me, it was just an album that really, like a song like Stardom in Acton. I'm so angry that you turned me on. I didn't stay your friend for too long, right? It's just one of those things that when you're a kid, you don't really understand. But then when you do understand, the kind of the tragedy is that, well, it's now too late because you've already fucked up in all those ways, right? Slit Skirts to me, though, is although the Sea Refuses No River is is just one of the most beautiful songs in his catalog.
Yeah, it is. It's great. Yeah.
Split Skirts is the one that just breaks my heart, right?
Somehow I
Because
didn't
that
mention
is,
that when I was talking about it. That's one of his top 5 songs. Yeah.
yes, I mean that, and that is a song that I can understand why he couldn't do it with the Who. It's a song that that is really just him, and he needed to get that off his chest.
Yeah.
It's a song that he wrote for his wife, and a song that he wrote for other people who were in that situation, because it is like everything he does, ambivalent. He's saying, well, here I am alone, and one day you will be alone too, right? And there is no upper hand in this story. It's just both people lose. But it's done so beautifully musically that this record to me is just, it asks a lot of questions. For example, what is Face Dances Part 1? I've never heard it, and clearly that was going to be something that was going to go on the record, right?
Right.
Why not? What happened? I've heard versions of Somebody Save Me played by the Who. They were releasing when they put out the new CDs, Face Dances, that has that one, a couple of others. Empty Glasses there also, the Who version. But it's just well, Somebody Save Me. That's another great song that you can't understand when you're a kid. If I had you for a single moment, I would have wanted to have you forever, but somebody saved me.
Yep.
It's just brilliant. It's just a brilliant album that I just can't say enough good things about it. Even North Country Girl, it has such longing, right? Everything about this record is about lost love, lost life, lost chances. And this goes all the way back to the first thing that got away from him, the Lifehouse, right?
Right. Yeah.
This whole thing with Teenage Wasteland, it wasn't about let's party and let's get fucked up. It was about it's just waste, right? We're not, this guy was looking at the hippies and thinking, what are we doing? We're just talking about things, but we're not actually doing anything.
Yeah.
So it's but it's a strange life. All these records, when you listen to them in sequence, like I did, you see that the man that he was in 1971 and the guy he was in 1993 is fundamentally identical. He's still asking the same questions. Who am I? What am I? Why am I that? This is an unresolved thing for him, and I really am grateful that he had the balls to write songs like that. Like, he just lays it bare, right?
And if you read his autobiography, he says that throughout the whole book. He's really been searching for those answers his whole life, and he hasn't found them yet. No. I mean, do any of us ever? I don't know, but
that's the thing. At least he's smart enough to know to ask.
Yeah,
and he respects his audience enough to pose the question to them, because I've always found as a Who fan, these songs are kind of mirrors. They're there for you to look at your face, also, right? This is why I've always been a fan. I really think that it's not just the music, but also the mission statement.
Yeah,
that appeals to me. And he says all these controversial things like, oh, the best thing that ever happened to me was being arrested for porn, because I couldn't work for 5 months. So I decided to finally get a colonoscopy done. And it was discovered that I had this cancerous polyp. So it saved my life. He'll just say that to provoke the wrath of all the people who already think he's a pedophile.
Right.
That's who he is. He just likes to stir shit. And I love him for it. I think it's brilliant that he does it, the way he does it, because it comes from the right place, I think. I've always admired him. I would never like to meet him. I think that as much as I admire him, I met John Entwistle. That was great. We can talk about another day, but I never met Pete Townshend, and I would hate to meet him because I admire him, his work. I don't think I would like him. I think I would be very tempted to punch him.
I think sometimes, that I've heard many people say that. I've even said it myself. Like, sometimes meeting your heroes is not exactly how you would like it to turn out to be, right? They're not exactly the people you thought. Like, it's like I've been asked so many times, like, well, wouldn't you like to interview and talk to and meet Richie Blackmore, right? Which is one of my favorite musicians of all time. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I guess that'd kind of be cool, but I don't really know if I need to, because I've heard way too many things about what he's actually like. And you know what? I don't know if I really need to experience that firsthand, right?
Precisely. So, and the thing with him is, I'm sure, look, he's a very smart guy. I don't. It's not that he's a prima donna. None of these things would affect me. It's just that the kind of conversation that I'm sure he would like to have, it would be none, first of all. But if he were to talk, then we would get into things that I would inevitably get annoyed, right? So this is why I don't want to meet him. Whereas with Entwistle, it was a joy. It was an absolute joy to meet
That
that.
I can see that, yeah.
Right? Just a joy.
Yeah.
So, you know, but yeah, I love his work. I hope he continues to write. I know people don't like that latest Who album that much. I think it's brilliant.
I liked it. No,
And I have a little story just to add. While I was on tour in Mexico, one morning I wake up and having my coffee like I do every day. And I discovered that he replied to me on Instagram. I forgot I had made a comment a few years ago when he had just released the Who album. Right? And I wrote him and I said, you know, I think the record is fucking brilliant. I love it. But that's not what you really want to hear, is it? Right. So I'll tell you what I think you really want to hear. You should finish Siege. And I said, I don't know who else will buy it, but I will. And he replied with an LOL and a heart. Right. So that surprised me completely.
And he just replied recently, so he's going back and looking at old stuff.
Yeah. This is something I sent him years ago.
Because that album's been out, like, what, 4 years ago that came out? Something like that?
Yeah. So as soon as I got it, I heard it. I just love the fact that he wrote good rock songs for a man his age. You know, Guantanamo Bay, Grenfell Tower, all these things are in that record. The guy is still, you know, cutting edge. And I just love the fact that the songs are beautiful. They don't have a public anymore, but they're great, you know. But yeah, I've always been a fan of Siege. For people who don't know, when the Who were trying to get out of their commitment to Warner Brothers, they were still contractually obligated to deliver one more album or two, I forget. And if they didn't, they were in the hook for a lot of money. So he was working on a project called Siege. And if you go to the Scooped CDs, they talk a little bit about those. There's a couple of those demos there. Siege was supposed to be like a proggy album, just based on groups of 5 black keys on the keyboard, and it had all these numbers and things. And apparently that was even more abstract for the other guys in the Who than Lifehouse. So that was obviously abandoned, and they got out of it by Townshend paying some money. And you remember that record, Who's Last?
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been so curious about it, and I just want to hear what this great man was thinking. Even if the other guy didn't understand it, I would like to take a shot at it. I would like to see if I get it, you know. So it was just funny that he replied to me just coincidentally. Like I noticed that he replied, and like the next day you pinged me saying, hey, you want to do this ranking? Like, you bet.
How weird is that, right? The fate stepped in, I guess, right?
It was awesome. But yeah,
that's cool. So so for everybody watching, rank these albums as you like them down in the comments below. I was just sitting here looking at the cover. I wanted to throw this out there. I remember when this first came out, I'm like, look at them with the upside down flying V on the cover. This is going to be a rocking album. And then you listen to it and you're like, there's barely any guitar on here, but the songs are really good. So yeah,
amazing songs. Yeah. You know.
So yeah, rank them as you like them down in the comments below, and visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on the notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below, we get the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, as well as our merch page. So thanks in advance for all your support there. And tune in 1 week from today. I believe I will be ranking the albums of a fairly obscure band called Freedom. They were around in the early mid-70s. A couple of guys who were in the original incarnation of Procol Harum and went off and did their own kind of like hard rock and blues rock band for a few albums. So that's coming up next weekend. And then we got in the not too distant future, we'll have Grant Arthur is joining me to rank the catalog of Sly and the Family Stone in a couple weeks. Karen LaPreziosa and myself will be ranking the albums of Church of Misery. Ryan Scal will be working with me to rank the albums of Electric Wizard. We got some good doomy stuff coming up, and
Nice.
all sorts of other things here. I'm trying to think of what else is added. Craig Kaminsky and I will be ranking the albums of The Obsessed, as well as Spirit Caravan. So you got some, and Nebula. So we got some cool kind of stoner shit coming up in the next few weeks and months. And Steve Keel and I will be ranking the albums of Dark Tranquility. So there's a lot in the pipeline for ranking the album shows over the next couple months. So stay tuned for all of them. And of course, tune in Tuesday night for Mr. Nasser and the rest of us on the Prague seat. So till then, for Louis, I am Pete. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.